Welcome back to the CryptoFather channel. Today is the 15th of October. It's the middle of the week. It's a Wednesday. And the crypto market's taking a little bit of a breather right now. We're going to have a look at the markets as always, and then the charts. And then we're going to move on to the articles talking about everything crypto related. We're back down below $4 trillion, 3.936, trading volume at $272 billion. The coins that pop up on the trending and the top gainers lists are coins that I've never heard of before. So it's interesting to see them here because they have massive pumps. Knockchain 101%, Yay Finance 248%, BNB Attestation Service 44%. Huge pumps on these tokens. The alt season is taking place right under our noses and we're not paying attention. Bitcoin sitting at $112,000, Ethereum at $4,120, BNB at $1,200, XRP 249, Solana 200, Cardano back at 69 cents, Litecoin at 97, Bitcoin 229, Monero 308, and Polkadot at 324. There's a bit of talk about Polkadot going on recently, despite the fact that Polkadot's down 22% on the 7 days. There is a bit of push on Polkadot. There are lot of posts being made trying to hype Polkadot up, and Polkadot is making some moves. There has been some announcements, some partnerships with soccer teams. So something is happening on Polkadot. Of course, they're trying to push a bit more advertising for Polkadot because Polkadot should be pumping. Like I've said it before many times, it should be pumping and it isn't. So that's strange. It should be in the top 10, but it is in the top 40. Barely so, at 39th place. So not too great for Polkadot. Hopefully that's going to change sometime soon. Looking at the charts, Bitcoin has printed a red candle. We've had the massive drop, then another red candle, 2 green candles, but the last green candle, yesterday's green candle, was very, very thin. Ivan on Tech was talking about a V-shaped Bitcoin recovery, which doesn't seem to be solidifying right now. We've got on the weekly, we've had a massive green candle and we're hoping for the break above this resistance line here on the fib. So we reached $126,000, which was a new all-time high essentially, but then Bitcoin snapped back down, way down. And now we are on the weekly, we're trying to recover. So Bitcoin is presently printing another green candle on the weekly, trying to recover from this disaster. On the smaller time frames, Bitcoin is struggling somewhat, and it seems like the sentiment is still there. Plan B is also announcing that he's still bullish. So, but I mean, Plan B was wrong in the past. So always be careful of these announcements. But we're still only in October. We should be good until the end of this year. We should be good until the mid-December or so, and quite possibly until January. Of course, personally, I will not be waiting until January. I'll be probably planning my exit from all crypto sometime throughout November and December. Bitcoin Archive just in. Republicans introduced bill to allow Bitcoin and crypto in 401ks under the federal law. And that is massive because Americans hold more than $9 trillion in 401k savings. If that amount of money was pushed into the crypto sphere and whack of it, even half of it was used to purchase Bitcoin in order to satisfy the 401k savings, that would be a massive inflow of greenbacks into Bitcoin. The Republican bill aims to make Trump's Bitcoin and crypto 401 order federal law. A Republican congressman is pushing to legally codify an executive order recently signed by the President Trump regarding retirement plans and alternative assets, in a move that could further push 401k providers to open the door to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Representative Troy Downing, RMT, a freshman congressman who has embraced crypto as a favorite issue this year, will introduce a bill Tuesday that would codify President Trump's August executive order on crypto and 401ks into law. A representative of the lawmaker confirmed to decrypt. And of course, this push comes all the way from Trump, who has been trying to promote Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies across the United States. US President Donald Trump is pushing to make it easier for Americans to use retirement savings and to invest in cryptocurrencies, private equity, property, gold, and other kinds of non-traditional assets. On Thursday, he ordered regulators to look for ways to change rules that might discourage employers from including such offerings in workplace retirement accounts known in the US as 401ks. The move is intended to eventually give everyday workers new access to investment formerly reserved for wealthy individuals and institutions, while opening up previously untouched pools of funding for firms in those fields. But critics say it could increase risks for savers. The order gives the Department of Labor 180 days to review rules, and experts said any change was unlikely to be felt immediately. But investment management giants such as State Street and Vanguard, known for their retirement accounts, have already announced partnerships with the likes of alternative asset managers Apollo Global and Blackstone to start offering private equity-focused retirement funds. So these things are already happening, and before you know it, people will be able to have access to Bitcoin through their 401ks retirement plans. And a social media firestorm erupted over allegations of a massive, well-funded effort to win a Trump pardon for disgraced FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried. I mean, even if this guy somehow managed to swindle his way out of prison, what is he going to do? I'm sure he's going to find something to do in undercover ways with banks or God knows where, out of the scrutinizing eyes of the public, continue doing his thing. But I mean, he's not going to be very welcome in the public eye. I don't think he's going to be able to start up any other new crypto investments, crypto ventures, because who's going to trust him? Conservative activist Laura Loomer's tweet alleging a pro-Trump pardon lobby for Sam Bankman-Fried drew wide reaction on X. Reporting confirms Bankman-Fried's parents have explored clemency options, but no registered lobbying efforts has surfaced. Analysts and prediction markets put the odds of a pardon in a single digit despite rising political chatter. Money talks, and if there's enough money talking, then we might see this kid back out on the streets. But again, I personally wouldn't be investing into anything that he's got to offer. Would you? Can Ethereum secure a nation's identity? Bhutan is betting on it. So Bhutan has begun mining Bitcoin using its natural resources of energy through hydropower, and it's been doing pretty good. Bhutan is rebuilding the core of its digital identity framework on Ethereum. The initiative, confirmed by Ethereum Foundation's Aya Miyaguchi, is part of the Himalayan kingdom's wider experiment with emerging technologies. It signals that blockchain, once confirmed to trading and tokens, is now being tested as public infrastructure. According to Miyaguchi, the move will see every one of the country's roughly 800,000 citizens hold a verifiable blockchain-secured identity that they control directly from their devices by 2026. That's interesting. This further shows how Bhutan's identity program has evolved rapidly since 2023. The National Digital Identity was launched initially via a ceremonial registration of His Royal Highness the Gyaltsen, a symbolic gesture making Bhutan's entry into the digital age. That first version ran on Hyperledger, a permissioned blockchain favored for enterprise pilots. By 2024, the government had shifted to Polygon, drawn by its lower fees and zero-knowledge proofs that allow users to confirm who they are without exposing personal data. Yet within a year, the government officials decided that migrating to Ethereum would offer the country unmatched decentralization and global security guarantees. And keep in mind that the majority of people across the globe, maybe not majority, but a huge chunk, still have no digital verifiable records. Governments have tried to solve this through centralized databases, but these systems are expensive to maintain and notoriously vulnerable to breaches. In the US, 22% of Americans have been victims to identity theft, with the Federal Trade Commission receiving over 1 million complaints in 2023. These thefts often target the elderly, resulting in over $10 billion worth in losses. Considering this, Bhutan's answer is to reverse that model by allowing citizens to control their own credentials rather than entrusting them to a central registry. And so this is what Bhutan, a tiny little nation, is doing, while big nations, the European nations and Western nations, are still struggling to grasp. Although the Western nations are falling, the UK, Australia, and Canada are falling but that is a topic for another day. The DOJ seized 15 billion worth of Bitcoin, the largest forfeiture, boosting US strategic reserve. And the word forfeiture is kind of familiar. This whole thing sounds a little bit familiar, too familiar, to what's happened with tradeogre and the Canadian RCMP's seizure of nearly anywhere between $30 to $50 million. And now the Canadian government can claim forfeiture based on the idea that nobody has come to claim their money. Because if money is, according to the Canadian criminal code, proceeds of crime are handled in a way that allows governments to just simply seize money that has been forfeited, as they claim. Subject to this section and sections, whatever, if an offender is convicted or discharged under Section 730 of a designated offense and the court imposing sentence on or discharging the offender on application of the Attorney General is satisfied on a balance of probabilities that any property is proceeds of crime obtained through the commission of the designated offense, the court shall order that the property be forfeited to Her Majesty to be disposed of as the Attorney General directs or otherwise dealt with in accordance with the law. Basically, so this is the Canadian law, so we know about forfeiture. And what this basically says is that if the tradeogre funds are deemed to have stemmed from criminal and operatives, it'll be a lot easier to for the RCMP to claim that this money had to be seized because it was criminally obtained. And most, according to the articles that I've read by the RCMP or reported through the media, the RCMP claims that most of the proceeds on tradeogre have been criminally obtained, and so that will fall in this region and would allow the RCMP to close the case a lot faster, which is why having representation through, for example, Palladium is very important. And of course, I still haven't written that letter, but from what I understand, we've got about 6 months. The RCMP has about 90 days to make a statement to send out a report to courts in order to let them know specifically how these proceeds have been, how the funds from tradeogre have been obtained, how they have been seized, and they need to prove that they have been seized properly or that they have been legally obtained, which of course, you know, it's whether that's done properly or not is questionable. We never know. You know, the hope lies in the court system that they do well by everybody and don't support their own government regulating bodies, or don't favor their regulating bodies, government regulating bodies. In any case, the DOJ announced the largest forfeiture action in its history on October 14, seizing 127 Bitcoin worth approximately 15 billion from Chen Zi, founder of the Prince Group. Apparently, this is what the governments are doing now, clamoring. So instead of, you know, everybody was trying to make Bitcoin, right? The public is working their asses off, making money, buying Bitcoin, trading, losing money. And the governments just steal it. They just go ahead and do seizures. Here's seizures there. This is illegal. That's illegal. So all the stuff that the public has established, the infrastructure that the public is building, the cryptocurrencies that the public, cryptocurrency infrastructure and cryptocurrencies that the public has built, now the governments all of a sudden are seizing because it's illegal. And you got to keep in mind that up until a couple of years ago, BlackRock, governments couldn't give a shit about cryptocurrencies, couldn't care less about Bitcoin. None of it was being spoken about. But now, all of a sudden, it's the holy grail and everyone wants a piece of the pie. And they're not doing it in any legitimate way. They're not obtaining their Bitcoin through mining. They're not purchasing it. They're simply stealing it. They're taking it from criminal enterprises and hoarding it. They should be distributing it to the public. But that's not the case. This is not going to be the case. When governments seize Bitcoin, they do not distribute it to the public. They will hoard it and keep it for themselves. And, you know, MPs and the people sitting in governments will be pocketing this money left and right, because it's not unheard of governments losing billions of dollars, both Canada and the USA, and most likely across all the other nations, because governments are a racket. The seized Bitcoin brings total US government Bitcoins to 325,283 Bitcoin, valued at over 37 billion, directly feeding the strategic Bitcoin reserve established by the March executive order. Did the US government hack a scam network for 15 billion in Bitcoin? Yes, it appears that they have. The US has issued 146 sanctions against the Cambodian corporate conglomerate Prince Group and has requested the forfeiture of 15 billion worth of Bitcoin linked to its alleged secret criminal network. The Treasury announced that enforcement action developed in jurisdiction with the UK is aimed at hindering scam organizations that target victims across the globe. But again, they know that these are victims across the globe and this money should be returned to the public, but will they do that? Of course not. Of course not. Why would they do that? That's a silly thing to presume. On-chain data suggests that the US may have hacked wallets linked to a 14 billion Bitcoin seizure, not just confiscated them legally. Investigators like ZachXB found inconsistencies in the Treasury's report tying the wallets to a 220 mining pool hack. If true, it signals a shift toward aggressive crypto seizure to build a US Bitcoin reserve beyond standard legal methods. And this is also the case for the Canadian government, obviously, or for the Canadian, for the seizure of the tradeogre funds by the RCMP. It kind of falls within the same category. They're doing it very aggressively. It's not a legal way of seizing, but simply labeling everything and everybody else within range as illegal. Everything you need to expect ahead of Jerome Powell's upcoming interest rate decision. The FOMC is 97% likely to cut rates below 4% on October 29th per CME data. The government shutdown has delayed key data, forcing reliance on alternative indicators. 2 more rate cuts are expected by year end as the Fed prioritizes jobs over inflation risks. When Bitcoin prices dipped, or the crypto prices dipped yesterday, people on X were up in arms, crying foul play, crying bear market, crying what's going on. It's very simple. BlackRock began selling massive amounts of Bitcoin. If you look 11 hours ago, a bunch of Bitcoin and ETH have been dumped here. 11 hours ago, 300 Bitcoin, 103 Bitcoin, 300 Bitcoin, 10,000 ETH. Massive amounts of ETH have been sold off by BlackRock. But the point I was trying to make is that BlackRock is dumping Bitcoin, which tanks the price, which then they can rebuy back in once the price has dipped, and then you ride the wave back up on the announcement of the FOMC and the Fed cutting rates by another few base points. The Federal Open Market Committee is on track to cut interest rates below 4% at its October 24th meeting, according to futures data from the CME Fed Watch tool, which shows a 97% probability of a reduction. The move would bring the federal funds rate down from its current 4% to 3.75 to 4, marking the Fed's first move towards a more accommodative stance since mid-year. So this is what you're going to see. You're going to see now mid-October, you're going to see sales, prices dumping so that institutions like BlackRock and other places can scoop it up on the cheap and then ride the wave up into the rate cuts. Bitcoin Archive made a post. Fed Powell speech summary outlook hasn't changed much since September. Current Fed policy toolkit is working well. Economic activity has surprised to the upside. Fed may stop shrinking its balance sheet in the months ahead. Sounds dovish. Send it. We're going to see a pump. And Binance, the recent depeg from a number of coins on Binance has brought Binance to its knees. Binance offers another $400 million to traders after crypto crash triggers recording liquidations. They're injecting $400 million back into the hands of users following the record-breaking $19 billion of liquidations that rocked crypto markets last week, sending prices to top assets plunging. The exchange and other BNB ecosystem firms have now earmarked more than $700 million in compensation for affected users as a result of the recent liquidations, after already committing a separate 283 million to reimbursements. Of the firm's latest 400 million in reimbursement, called the Together Initiative, 300 million will be set aside and distributed in amounts between $4 and $6,000 to users who dealt with forced liquidations on the platform between October 10th and 11th with incurred losses of at least $50. So if you incurred losses of $50, you might get a reimbursement of $4 from them. Ka-ching! The USDC amount will be determined based on the assessment of each user's liquidation loss amount, loss ratio, and other multiple factors. And all of that occurred due to a depeg that happened on several coins operated on Binance. So all is good. All is good. CZ is taking care of his people. That's nice to see. We are taking care of the tradeogre situation. I am about to write up a letter and send it to the RCMP. Of course, I got to send it with some designated shipment services because the Canadian Post apparently is on strike. I wonder if they're still on strike. Quite possibly. In any case, whatever you do, please make sure to smash the likes on this video. Subscribe to the channel. Do pick up a copy of Crypto and Millennials. It's available for sale. Link in the description below. It's a book of 188 pages, all crypto wisdom in one place for you, digitally remastered, available on Amazon for Kindle. Pick it up right now. Also, don't forget to pick up a Descent wallet. Ref links are also below the video. You get a $30 discount on the purchase of one and a $99 discount on the purchase of two of these. Remember, not your keys, not your crypto. Keep in mind, don't store crypto on the exchanges because tradeogre happens and seizures happen and you don't know what the governments are going to do in order to get their clammy hands on more crypto. They're not being very nice about it. They're taking advantage of what we have created, what the retail people have created, and they don't care who's crying wolf. I hope you have a fantastic Wednesday and I will see you tomorrow in another video. CryptoFather out. Peace.